KwaZulu-Natal has recorded over 26,000 teenage pregnancies between April and December last year. Religious leaders are now calling for steps to be taken to stop sexual abuse against minors. We're joined by the KwaZulu-Natal Christian Council Executive Committee Secretary, Bishop Nathi Zondi. Bishop Zondi, good evening to you. Thank you for your time tonight. The statistics are absolutely staggering because what they tell us is that there is an incredible problem of abuse that is taking place in KZN, and in particular, sexual abuse.
It's true, Kathy. It cannot be. There's no doubt that we are facing a problem that has reached epidemic proportions, and it's a serious problem. And we, as the Council of Churches and all the religious leaders, we see this as a challenge both to ourselves and all the other stakeholders to say now we need to rise up and do something together. It cannot be a business as usual when our young children have to leave school because they have to raise children themselves, when they have to drop out of school because now they have become mothers and fathers. It has become a serious problem that we all must stand up and do something together. That's basically what we are saying. And we are also saying that it's time that all the stakeholders within this province of KwaZulu-Natal, we put our heads together and begin to come up with strategies that will curb this scourge. But also, Kathy, when you have a pregnancy rate rising in the age group within 10 years and 14 years, it means you also have a violation of the rights of children there. There is a serious violation of the children's rights that must be kept. And we say it's time that the law enforcement as well have to play their part in ensuring that these people who impregnate kids as young as 10 are brought to book.
It's such an important aspect of this data that you're bringing up, because that age group that you've mentioned there really speaks to an element, a legal aspect of statutory rape. Bishop Zondi, what do you see in communities when there is a 10-year-old that has fallen pregnant? How are families responding? How is that contributing to this problem?
We are presently, Kathy, working in the various districts of our province. For example, we've seen a high increase in the south coast on the Ugu district, and we've had to deal with a number of families through our district councils and our member churches. Families that have had to face a situation where their children have to step out of school and drop out because they've all of a sudden fallen pregnant. It becomes such a traumatic experience, mostly for the peers, because remember, this is a child whose friends are playing out there in the streets and playing there in the sports field, and all of a sudden has fallen pregnant. It becomes a community trauma, as it is a trauma within the families. But we must also say, Kathy, that we see this rising as we see the whole phenomenon also of child-headed homes continues in our communities. And we do see also, as the increase in substance abuse in these communities, also children become more vulnerable. It's a combination of a number of factors that various stakeholders have to stand up and begin to do something together.
So there is an element of neglect that's coming in, which I would imagine opens the door for these young children to be taken advantage of. But the perpetrators, what do we know about who these perpetrators are likely to be? Because these are also people in those very same communities.
There are the various factors that come into play, Kathy. In some instances, you would find that there will be a perpetrator easily identifiable, and therefore the law enforcement either have brought that person to their custody, or in some cases it will be a case where a child has been abused in cases where the child would not be in a position to immediately identify who the abuser is. So it becomes a call from us as church leaders, as well as community leaders, to say communities also have to play a part in protecting children. Because though a child may not be able to point at the perpetrator, but one person or two people in the community might know that person. So we are calling as a church, as a church council, we are calling on communities to rise and protect children. But we are also calling on churches and other religious institutions to create an environment where they become safe spaces for children to speak out. Because you know, Kathy, some children don't have parents, and others are in child-headed homes, and some don't have people to speak to. So it's important that whether it's a mosque or a church or just a religious institution, we create spaces where these children can speak out so that they are able to point to those who need to be brought to book, but also are able to get and find help. So the psychosocial support is extended to these kids and these young people as in their time of need.
The other conversation, of course, that needs to be part of the efforts to tackle this high pregnancy rate is that of sexual reproductive health. One certainly gets a sense that there isn't enough of that taking place.
Look, Kathy, there is no doubt in my mind that, and in fact, there's also a common general acceptance among us as leaders, that when we see such an increase in pregnancy rate among teenagers and our children, it points us to one thing. Either our interventions are not enough, or we need to rethink our strategies going forward. That includes on how we educate our young people on their rights, but also rights to their bodies, but also how we educate them on healthy sexual practices, or even relationships, where we teach our young people in how, for example, they can delay their sexual debut, but also where they can, where they can go if they need help, where they can go to get information on how they can conduct themselves in their relationships. Because Kathy, if I take myself as a pastor of a church, we teach, we preach. But of course, ultimately, if the results are such that I don't see the results of what I'm preaching, I have to rethink my methods and my strategy. That's what we are calling for in our churches, in our communities and religious institutions. Let us really look at our strategies on how we empower our young people and our children. What sort of tools and instruments and information we put at their disposal so they are able to make right and correct choices about themselves, about their relationships, and even about their sexuality. And that's the call, Kathy, from us as a Council of Churches.
Bishop Nathi Zondi, we'll leave it there for tonight. Certainly a lot more work has to go into helping to redeem the futures of these young people.